And another car goes by. And another car goes by. Good grief, people. It's not like I live on a big road, but yes, we're on live here. Show number 28. Now there's noise outside. I'm hearing everything right now. And another car goes by. Is everybody in town going by my house? My God. Jeez. Oh, here comes another car. Oh, goody. There goes another one. What is it, like 8 cars? For God's sakes. So, as I hear more cars going by. Okay. This is the first show where I'm doing, because whether Matt will be on or not is yet to be seen. But this is the first show for 2017. We didn't do a show last week, mainly because I was kind of about wanting to do a show, and Matt was kind of about wanting to do a show after the fact when I told him I didn't want to do a show last week. So we've had 2 weeks to get a lot of stuff to talk about, and boy, we have lots to talk about, evidently. So, but in the last 2 weeks, of course, we've had Christmas, New Year's, and of course, in my realm of excitement, right after I did the last show, show 27, that night I got horrendously sick, which was right before we did the show on the 23rd of December. And I got horrendously sick and was pretty much sick all through Christmas Eve into the beginning of Christmas Day. Luckily, Christmas this year for me was going to be fairly small anyway. So we weren't good, because it wasn't going to be a big thing this year anyway. But I wanted to do some stuff on Christmas Day. No, was pretty much recovering at home. So that didn't go over real well. So, and I'm kind of coming back. I'm much better now. I still going to the doctor, because there's still some things that are kind of like right now. So, but other than that, in the past 2 weeks, it's been cold. It's been kind of warm, but we've pretty much, and this is what's really bad. This is what really is getting me to do a show this week, especially, is the fact that right now outside in Iowa, in Anamosa, where I live, Matt lives in the same town. We have what I would consider no snow on the ground. The only snow we have is like piles and areas that are shaded, especially on north-facing lawns or whatnot. But we have, excuse me, no snow. We had flurries and light snow last night, but a lot of that kind of just didn't do a whole lot. We had a little bit of snow a couple of days ago. It did actually accumulate on my driveway, but a day later, all that snow was gone. It pretty much evaporated. So it went from it, because I didn't even have to go out and even take a broom to it, because it was like gone. I'm like, yay! I don't have to do work. Yay me! But this is what's really interesting, and this is it's not unheard of, but not difficult. Well, it's somewhat difficult, but not unheard of, for us to have no snowpack on the ground and the temperature to fall below zero. And we've fallen below zero about 2 of the last 3 nights, like 1, 2, 3, 4 below, something like that. So it's very difficult for us to be that low when there's no snow on the ground, which sent me a tweet that I sent out a couple of days ago saying, imagine what the temperature would be if we had snow on the ground. We would probably be at least 10 to 15 degrees colder, especially given that this is a fairly big cold snap. We would probably, for example, today, it was in the teens. It was in the mid-teens today. If we'd had snow on the ground, because it was sunny, somewhat sunny today, we probably would have had a high that maybe barely cracked 0 if we had snow on the ground. And because we didn't, we were in the teens. Now, there is snowpack to the north, but you have to go into far northern Iowa to get any sort of actual still snow on the ground. But places that, but this is why this cold snap is very interesting. The cold weather has gotten all the way down into the south. And if Matt wanted to join, because I'm gonna send him a message right now to ask if he wants to be on, because I didn't send him one. Do you want to be on? I've started already. So we'll see if earlier, because I was like, but anyway. So when we have cold weather, it's all the way down to the south, and then they had a storm system come through, which if Matt decides to be on, we might discuss, because we'll probably discuss that. And so we'll probably talk about that, because of course that storm system right now is just exiting the New England states now. So it was kind of like a nor'easter, kind of, sort of, not really. But it kind of brushed southern New England. But it wasn't like a big deal there as it was in the south, because any little bit of wintry weather in the south is pretty much an emergency. And for a northerner like me, I can understand people in the south having these issues because they don't have the infrastructure to handle winter weather, because it's not economically feasible for states like Alabama, Georgia, or Mississippi to then have tons of plows. Because now they do have some, especially in Alabama, in the northern part of the state, because of the mountains. When you have these very large hills, because I've driven in northern Alabama before, especially in and around Sand Mountain, when we accidentally, many years ago, we were coming back from Talladega, and we were going back to Decatur, because that's where our hotel was. So we were taking 77 north to Gadsden, which was actually to Attalla, because then we took the road that went around to Attalla, and then you take 278 going west toward Coleman, and then we would take and then we would flip over to 67 that would take us to Decatur. Well, this was, I think, the first time we ever went, or was it the second time? I don't remember. No, was it the second time or the first? I don't remember. Anyway, we got lost because evidently we like getting lost. I don't know if it was the first time. It was me, my sister, and my father, or it was my father and I. It one of those 2 years. I don't remember. Anyway, we ended up going the wrong way, and we ended up, when we got to Attalla, we got in the wrong lane. And the lane to get into the to go on to 278 to go to the west was that lane. We were in the wrong lane, so we ended up taking, I think it was 231. I think that's what the road was. I don't remember. And we went up Sand Mountain and we went to Albertville and Gunnersville, and then we had to take 69 down through Arab back to the Joppa intersection to then take 67, and that was fun because then I got to see all the lovely hills and I got to be on a mountain. I'm like, yay, mountain. So, okay, yes, please. Boy, he's needy today. Needy. Okay, so Matt's going to come on because Matt's needy, evidently. So just a minute. I got to close this. I'm hoping that we're not having what's-his-face Hank on because I'm not prepared for him right for today. So I got to send, I guess I send this. I don't know what I'm sending. I'm lucky I know anything. I'm lucky I can, no, give me, no, stop. Come on, give me. Yes, yes. Thank you. Okay. So anyway, we came up. So I know all those hills. So then, of course, there's always they have to have plows there, especially ice trucks or sand and salt trucks for whatnot. So, and Matt's joined us, but he can't interrupt because I'm in the middle of talking or doing a story. So anyway, so of course, going up and down all those hills, they have to have sand trucks at least. So, and maybe even plows, because I mean, they do. But economically, except for that area, there's no reason why they need to have sand and salt trucks like the tens of thousands of sand and salt trucks that northern states do, especially in southern states like Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, except in mountainous areas like northeast Alabama, which I talked about with Sand Mountain when I drove up and down the hills, and they were very mountainous. So,
are you talking about the ice situation?
I'm talking about the winter storm that occurred in the south.
Yeah.
And why it's economically not feasible for states down there to have the amount of winter weather equipment that northern states do. Thus why small little snowstorms that up here would be like, nah, will be like catastrophic emergencies.
Yeah, I'm not sure how far you've already covered and like dug down into it, but if you look into it, the cost of your average plow truck, you know, your average, call it public works service vehicle, something that can be used to haul stuff or to spread salt or sand or something like that. Depending on the platform that you start out with, can cost you as little if you buy a used one from another city that they, you know, maybe they got some upgraded equipment from FEMA or something like that, and you bought it second hand. It might cost you $100,000 for a good one, all the way up to building brand new ones, which could cost, if you get a really good rig, you spend $1 million pretty easily on just one rig. And spending that kind of money for, what does the South see, Jeff, in terms of winter storms every year? One, maybe two, three if they're really unlucky.
Well, when speaking of like the northern part of the what I'll call the Mid-South, Memphis, this I will call the Interstate 40 corridor. I think Nashville would be
okay.
Too far north, but like northern Alabama, because driving there, and I know you've driven in that area, there's a lot of the signs that say bridges ice over. I know I've seen a lot of them in northern Alabama. Yeah. I saw them in Mississippi. So they do have them there, but they don't have the scale that they do here because we have so many of them.
Yeah, precisely. It's not financially, I can't even speak tonight. It's not financially really feasible for them to really buy all that equipment for a relative few storms per year, if that makes sense.
The northern part of the states, like Alabama, and I think even Mississippi, and even northern Georgia, I think they have the equipment there because they have more in the terms of ice storms and some snowstorms there, but not on the frequency as they do up here. I mean, 2 inches of snow, and I think I saw several Southerners mention this, and James Spann has mentioned this several times too. 2 inches of snow down there would be the equivalent of like having a foot to 2 feet of snow here. It would shut everything down, literally. Unless you were New York City, they'd have a foot of snow and they'd still say go to school. But it in the scope of it, it is the same way. But and it wasn't the apocalypse that it was a couple of years ago, because this was well forecast, unlike the other one, which is kind of mistimed. It was forecast, but the timing was off. So
I think they learned I think a lot of what happened with that event that you just mentioned a couple of years ago, I think a lot of that went into this, because it's the first real shock that they had of, I guess, if you think of it in these terms, the next real shock that they had of having something like that, where some little thing could have changed, caused lots of ice on the roads, which is what wound up happening with this storm. There was a lot a lot of
Yeah,
ice
there was
on
a
the
lot of
roads.
freezing. There was a lot of freezing rain, especially in central Alabama into Georgia, and a little bit of Mississippi.
And surrounding that, some snow. So you had some overlap area where you had some liquid precipitation, and then snow, and then the temperatures kept falling
Yeah,
and still snowing. So you had in spots not on as wide of scale as a couple of years ago, but you had some areas again that were under similar conditions, fairly cold, still snowing, that combined with traffic causing ice.
yeah, because the problem they had, and Span mentioned this, and has mentioned this before, that when and he mentioned this right after the snowstorm, and I went back. This was one things I was doing in the 2-week break between me being sick and throwing up and whatnot. But besides doing that, the weeks I went back and watched the storm alert from this last year, which I might go into a rant about that a little bit later. But anyway, and I've done that ranting about that before. But anyway, he discussed in Storm Alert Extreme, which I went to twice in Birmingham, 2011 and 2012. I went to the one after the 2011 outbreak because I wanted to be there for that one. But anyway, they talked about the winter storm because Span does a talk now about the April 27th event, but he also talks about winter storm events, especially snowpocalypse. And he said that he and a lot of people, especially Southern meteorologists like James, they do not know a lot about what happens when it snows, when it's cold. It snows there, yes. But typically when it snows there, it's like 30 degrees or 35. The snow melts. It's watery, slushy, the end. On that event, the snowpocalypse event, it snowed, it was 20. And then it fell into the teens. Here, we see that a lot. I mean, every snow we get from between like mid-December and the early to middle part of February is those type events.
Correct.
And the roads are treated the end. Well, we go back to the south. They don't have the equipment for that. And it was mistimed. The snow started falling way too early. People got caught out by it. Crashes, accidents, people died. And then Span had to apologize, and then he got accused of being, of why should he have done that? But I think, honestly, it was just an event where a lot of people, it brings up the point when you're stuck in I wouldn't say stuck. When you're in a market, or you're in markets where you don't I'll get it out. They too. When you're not having winter weather a lot, like snow, ice, this type of stuff, you sort of get tunnel vision that you're good at what occurs a lot, but then when you get something that's a rarity and you're not sure, it could bring down even people like Span and even like veteran meteorologists that don't have the concept of winter weather in colder temperatures than what is typically seen in that area of their responsibility. And I think that's what happened. And I think they ended up having to go back to learning what happens when it snows at this temperature, because that's when they realized that if roads aren't treated, a snowstorm that's 2 inches can turn immediately into a devastating ice storm. It'll have the effects of an ice storm on the roads, but you still have power. And it's completely like that. And I think the weather people, especially in the South, I think learned the lesson. And I think with this storm, wasn't the same type of system. Close, but not quite. I think that they took those lessons and it was used into this event. And I think they did a lot way better than what happened a couple of years ago.
I'll mirror that. That was a very good. This event was very well forecast, and I think even better than the forecast was the communication.
Yes.
The communication was spot on. There was there was nuance there that may have led to some slight confusion and, you know, different colors being used. But overall, the biggest messages, the biggest hit points were all the same. It could be up to X amount. It wasn't 3 inches and then that's it, or it's going to be 2 inches or less. It was up. It was well communicated. 0 to X inches, 0 to Y inches, 0 to Z inches, and it was very well defined. And on top of the definition, the uncertainty of precise placement of the snow and the snow totals was very well communicated.
Yeah.
I think it was put forth in a way that made it very clear to the lay person, you know, a person who doesn't follow weather, like you, me, anybody listening to the show, anybody that listens to Weather Brains. They understood. They had a very good chance of understanding what was going on in the minds of people at the National Weather Service, people in the news, you know, TV, weather people, and everybody else. Everybody had the same good, consistent message, and they all said, this could be trouble, so look out.
Yeah.
So A+ for all the NWS officers, whoever handled social media during that event, good on you.
And from what I remembered about this too was this was the first time the Weather Service in Birmingham had issued a winter storm warning, I believe, since the event in question, the snowpocalypse. They hadn't had a winter storm warning since then, and this was their first since that event, I believe. Yes, yeah. I think that's true. So, I mean, they even do. Whoops, my computer's decided to want to go to sleep, but. They were very precise, and the thing that I went on, and this was before you came on, because I complained about this with the cold weather here, and we have no snow. We virtually have none. I mean, we have the piles, because that's what you pretty much missed. Besides me talking about me getting sick, but anyway. And then that's when I dissolved into the cold weather, going down to the south and producing the snow, and then I went off into that. But they have more snow now on the ground than we do. That's sad. That's sad. Birmingham, I think, has more snow. Atlanta, there's places in Mississippi that have more snow. And the thing is, I looked at some model data. They may have snow on the ground because they got quite a bit. Because some of the models at the beginning were like saying 1 inch or 2. And of course, you didn't want to say uncertainty because they were like uncertain. The only one that seemingly was bullish on it was the GFS. And then all of a sudden, all the models caught up to the bullish GFS, and the GFS was pretty much spot on. Because what I've noted for years, the GFS is a better winter model than it is in the summer. Because it tends to get winter storms better than these mesoscale type features with summer weather, like thunderstorms and whatnot. It tends to, it can place them somewhat, but winter storms, they seem to just nail down really decently. And that's always been the case. And a lot of like weather people are like cheering, yay, the GFS is great. And then the first time they mess up, they'll be like, that thing's crap or something. I mean, it just so happened to be, because a lot of people were like looking at the GFS saying it was showing like 4, 5, 6. And they were like, that's ridiculous. And it ended up being true. I mean, we can't just say one model is great and the others are crap, but you have to take into consideration, why is the GFS painting that? You may need to look at why it's painting that and why the other models are not into a certain aspect, especially in winter weather. I mean, when it comes to March, April, the GFS is almost as, you might as well starting to take good looks at other models by that point. But
I think with models, I think you have to look at the initial conditions at which each of the models start with. They all start, you know, the 3 popular big ones that we most commonly refer to, which is the NAM, the GFS, and the Euro, they all start with their own set of conditions. They don't all start with the same sheet of paper. They all start with different things. And with how they start each run, I think the GFS has its better performance in the wintertime because its initial conditions that it starts with lean more towards allowing snow and precipitation. The NAM, I think, is pretty well documented that it's the other way. It's better with allowing convection, thunderstorms, severe weather. You don't see a whole lot of people looking at the GFS on April 15th looking at severe weather potential for April 20th.
Yeah.
They're looking at the NAM. They're looking at the NAM and sometimes the Euro.
Which is why the M in NAM is mesoscale. Because you're talking, mesoscale is, in most people's weather brain, mesoscale means, oh my gosh, thunderstorms and something. Unless there's going to be thunder snow, which there was in this event in Mississippi. I did know that had happened.
Yes, so we're
outside of that, not every snowstorm produces thunderstorms. I mean, in the snowy winter side. So, I mean, you can't just speculate with that. But yeah, the GFS is not used for doing severe weather. It gives you an idea with severe weather with the GFS, but the GFS is by far very good at winter weather. It may not be good, especially at maybe placing where the bands could be, because that's more mesoscale, and that's where the NAM comes in. But if it says it's going to snow, this is where it's going to snow, then you have a pretty good idea that that's not going to change a whole lot. It's just where's there going to be like a band where there could be thunder, lightning, and then it dumps even more. That's the GFS is not meant to be that precise, because I don't think they're ever going to get the GFS that precise without putting more funding into it. And that goes back to the bill that was supposed to fix that, and that never went through. Maybe that's going to come back out in this Congress, in this congressional session. We'll see. I don't know. That's something for later on. But
I need to stop you there. I thought I saw something on Twitter. I'm going to have to dig because I was perusing Twitter earlier today.
Yeah, I don't know. They've been kind of flying things through Congress now anyway. Right now.
That vote coming back.
Yeah, because they're going to bring the bill back. It just has not, because I knew they were going to bring it back after it kind of failed to get to the floor at the end of last year because they fought over this river in Alabama, Florida, and Georgia again, which seems to be like the hot topic over the last like 25 years. Like, really, just tell these 3 states to just screw off. I could care less. Because the other 47 states could give a crap less about your water. I mean, for God's sakes, people. But anyway. So, yeah.
That's Trinky tonight.
No, because... But so that the winter storm happened. The winter storm's moving away. But there's one thing, because I'm just gonna put this up. This is the model run. This is on for over the next, of course, the entire GFS model run. So you know how good this is gonna look. So I'm just gonna bring this up. Come on, gimme. Let me screen share this. No, I don't want to screen share that. I want to screen share this. If this happens, that is going to be probably not good. Because that is the total accumulated rainfall. And then, of course, snow is on there too. But, of course, the snow is snow and it's not listed. If that was to occur in California, which I'm showing right now, because I don't know if you can see it or not.
Yes, I can.
But that could be runoff, that could be flooding. I mean, you see that 24.5 inches of liquid right up
liquid,
here?
yes.
This is the Sierras. They're probably going to have if this was to be correct, and I mean, they're going to get pounded. The GFS shows a lot of storm systems just slamming into California. This would probably really dent the drought that they've had, the long-term drought that California's had. But if they're going to have this much precipitation over the next 2 weeks, a lot of this is not going to soak in. It's going to run off, which means you're going to have rivers flooding, like the Sacramento River, which is about right here. You're going to, even down here in Southern California, where they may get 2, 3, 4 inches of rain. All those basins are going to start flooding. The Los Angeles River is going to flood, which is pretty much concrete for most of the city. But a lot of the rivers down here, up here, the Central Valley will flood. The Sierras are going to get dumped on, which is be shocking because the Sierras haven't had a dumping like this in probably at least 5 years. Because just looking at this, because I can tell you right now, this would be probably 12 to 16 feet
of snow,
which would be awesome because they would get a good snowpack for the water for the summer. So
yes,
we'll see if this occurs. Well, hopefully not as much as this because this would be a little too crazy. But since snowfall only goes out 10 days, the snowfall in this particular area right here, the snowfall was at 110 inches. And the rainfall at that point wasn't even at 12. It was just under 10. And this is now at 12 to 13. So we're talking 130, 140, and 144 inches is 12 feet. So I could see 12 to maybe 16 feet in here easily.
And there's one little spot that has 24.5 inches.
Which is in, I mean, yeah, they're going to get, that's where I'm thinking they're going to get 12, 16 feet. So it's going to be fun going over Donner Pass for those that are going over the Interstate 80 at Donner Pass. They're going to have chains for the next about 3 weeks probably or more. Yep. So
say hello to the Pineapple Express.
Yeah, they were calling it the atmospheric river because that's what it was. Because I can bring up, and I'll bring this up. So let me do that. Come on, the Continental, this. Come on. Yay. Now I'll take this off because I'm going to put on the precipitation rate. So this is going to get really goofy for a time. Because this shows, just watch, here's California right here. Now this is model data, everybody, so don't think this is a forecast. Oh my gosh, because I have to say that. But look at California, and I'm just going to point it right here. And I can just, there's one system, there's another system, there's another system, and another one. Then here comes another one, then another one. I mean, it's just continuously getting dumped on. And you notice while that occurs, if you go back to where we are, right about here, you get a little bit of something there, a little snow there, and then a little snow there. I mean, it's, and I can even bring up the temperature anomaly. I mean, this is what people are going crazy about, is all this warmth up here is because all the cold that's supposed to be up here is now all down here. And that's what, so then when if I just fast forward this, look at all that warm air. You know, even the one thing is when you can see little circulations. Those are the coolest because you can see the lows on a temperature anomaly. One here, one there, there. You can see, it's so cool to see that, and you can just point out the storm system. You see there's a warm spell, but then you look, you can see cold air is coming back down, and there it is. It's fairly easy to spot. But look, the warm air is now sort of gone up here. And then you notice up here, now it's warm right up here near the North Pole again. So, of course, they're going to say, the North Pole's melting. I'm like, hey, can it melt here? But, I mean, Alaska looks like they're going to just get cold. So, if this is to be right. And then here, it's going to start warming up. But there's still going to be cold snaps, and we're still going to have some, we may get more snow, but I don't see. The thing that makes me very, very suspicious is that if we don't have much snow for the rest of this month, I'm going to be very concerned about what next spring and when spring and summer come, because this is getting sort of eerily similar to the winter before the 2012 drought.
Ooh.
From lack of snow. And that is dangerous at this point, because I mean, it's all well and fine if we had precipitation, even if it rained. And we had rain a couple of days ago where it rained, and I didn't go out and measure. I didn't put my rain gauge out because I didn't want it to freeze, because the temperature dropped the next day. That's what killed all our snow. We had probably at least a quarter to a half an inch of rain as a truck goes by. I mean, that rain was great, but the ground is frozen. So where did it go? It went into the rivers. Well, good for them. It's not going to help the farmers in April and May when they need the moisture in the ground. So the rain is useless. We need snow now, and we're not getting it. So I'm glad California is getting it, but it's like, come share some, please. But
when one place gets a feast, the other gets a famine.
Yeah.
'Tis the balance.
Yeah, so back to when I was, because I wanted to get back onto this before I forgot it, because then I'll forget something. About the weather, the Storm Alert Extreme that they have that 3340 James Spann Station has. This is what pisses me off, and I've ranted, I think, about this way back a long time ago. But this was way before you've been on. This goes back probably maybe like to the first 8 or 10 or 12 polygons.
Mm-hmm.
That back then, back in 2011, 2012, because in 2011 I went with my dad, my late father, and in 2012 I went with my father, me, and my brother-in-law. We went down there, and it was in Birmingham. 2011, 2012. It was in November. It was during the car show, the Alabama Auto Show. Ooh, BJCC, downtown Birmingham. Ooh, it's like, and because I wanted to go there because after 2011, I wanted to see the damage for myself. See, I'm smart. I'm not these gawkers who go and look at the damage like an hour later. I wait months because I knew that there would still be damage down there when I went in November, and sure enough, there was. And I saw it, and that's where I wanted to see it for myself. Anyway, that's not the description or continuation. But I went there, 2011, I got, and I'm still mad at James about this. I told James that I was going to be there. He announces in a crowd of 500 people that I'm there. I got so red in the face. It was so annoying. I did not like that. That creeped me out, and he knew that. And I was like, and I had him on Polygon after that. I don't think I even told him that. But I was like, oh. But anyway. But this is not why I'm ranting about it. This is what I'm going to go on to the rant about. The auto show decided we're not going to be in November anymore. We're not going to be in April. And I'm thinking, okay, April. When is the severe weather season in Alabama? April. Doesn't sound good. So for 1 year, they didn't have it. Then they started the Storm Alert, the Storm Alert Extreme, which is the spotter training and whatnot and everything, is in April. Yep. It is now in April. Because that's when the auto show is. So you get to go, if you went to Storm Alert Extreme, then you can go to the auto show for free. And it's like, I got excited because I wanted to go see automobiles, and I could get in for free because the auto show costs like $8-9. But anyway, and if you want to go in for free, go to Storm Alert Extreme, you see Span and go, ooh, ah.
and then praise at his bald head. But anyway, you wouldn't be praising at Brian Peters. He ain't giving you free chicken. So anyway, we went. They have it in April now, and that's where and I'd love to go back there, but I'm thinking if I went there this year, because it's going to be the second weekend or first weekend in April. April 8th is when it's going to be, because that's the Saturday of the auto show. The auto show is like a couple days, but they always have it on Saturday, so it's April 8th. I already looked it up. That's when it's supposed to be. Whether or not they have it, I don't know. And I'm thinking April 8th. And I'm thinking, what bad weather occurred on that day? Oh, that's right. April 8th, 1998. An F5 tornado hit Birmingham. That doesn't sound like a date you'd want to be doing a severe weather thing, especially on a day like that or something. I'm thinking they're going to have to come up with something better than that in April, because if I went down there again, whether I go there or not, I don't want to go down there, spend a bunch of money, and they say, oh, we can't have it now. We're going to have severe weather. At that point, I'd be like, well, why are you having it in April? You run the risk of this. I mean, they run the risk of it when they were in November, because that's their secondary tornado season. But they've in all the years they've had it, I don't think except for the 1 year they didn't do it because that's when they shifted it and they had to do everything. They've never had to cancel because of severe weather. And I'm wondering, with it being in April, one of these years, they're going to end up having to cancel it because of severe weather. And I'm just, it boggles my mind or something, because all the weather people, all of their station meteorologists were all there. Because they had Brian, James, Charles, and Megan. And I don't like Megan. And I'll say it right now, there's several people that don't like her, because they took Ashley's job, and there's people, especially Mike, who used to be on the show, hates her because they took away Ashley. And I'll leave it at that. But anyway, because he could, if he was on here, he would rant about that. And he did in like months ago when he was still on the show. But anyway, but I mean, I'd like to go. I don't want to end up spending a bunch of money to go down to Birmingham for a weekend. I mean, it would be nice to go to Birmingham, but I'm not going to want to go, ooh, I want to praise in the face of James or something. And the first thing I'd say is, I haven't watched the Weather Brains in a year. And he'd probably say, why? And I'd say, because. And I'd probably say nasty things or something. But so I'd rather not. So. And we've discussed that before, so I'm not going to go into that. But
the last couple of episodes, though, I must say, were pretty darn good.
Yeah,
they were pretty good.
Well, the one thing too is I've seen who they're going to have on and later. It's like the thing that really bothers me more, because I know they had Laura Myers on, and she's in NWA, and I'm glad she's in the NWA. The problem is, it's almost like the social science has hijacked the show, and now it's turned more into, it's more, well, talk weather 5 minutes, talk about other stuff for an hour. And I don't want to go back into that, but it just lost my interest. It's like, I'd rather talk with people that are more interesting than talk about people that I have no idea who the heck they are. And then they talk about stuff that has very little to do with weather. It's almost like Weather Brains is going down the Weather Channel route. They might as well put on a movie that has nothing to do with weather and put that on as a Weather Brains episode, because that's about where it's heading. They're kind of deviating slightly. It's not completely deviated. They're deviating slightly from where the Weather Brains used to be, and not going off about them talking about the weather every day. Oh my gosh, here's the current weather, because I went into that. But I'm talking about the deviation of where the show was when I first started watching it, and even the first 3 years after, up to even 2011. Nowadays, they don't even talk hardly about any quote unquote event weather anymore. They talk about stuff that has almost nothing to do with weather, except for certain aspects, and that drives me nuts. I mean, I don't even watch. I mean, I have better things to do on my Monday and Tuesday nights. They're going to be doing it on Tuesday night this week because everybody wants to watch the Alabama football team. It's like after a while, isn't it boring to watch Alabama's football team win national titles against Little Sisters of the Poor, aka Clemson? So, I mean, really, I mean, eventually, I'd say, eventually Nick Saban's going to retire. What are you going to do? Keep him there until he's 90? I'm like
well, the guy does really like the coach.
Bear Bryant did quit before he died. And then Gene Stallings, he quit before he got too old to do it. I mean, there's going to be a time when Nick Saban's going to be like, I'm old now. Bye-bye.
Yep.
And he'll go back to his home in West Virginia or something because that's where he's from. So, and I have
you never know.
My throat is getting dry now. So, I mean, there's just certain shows that are just, but this is the one thing, going back to the Storm Alert Extreme, because I watched it. I found it on YouTube, thank God. So it's like, you can watch old Storm Alert Extremes, which I find funny, including the one that I was at, 2011's, which is not on YouTube. It's on something else. But I've seen it. I actually watched it back. It's funny. I can watch the same Storm Alert Extremes that I was at here. But, and of course, Brian Peters does his spotter training thing, and he virtually uses the same slides. And I'm thinking, get some new slides. It's like, really? Get some new slides, Brian. Good grief. But anyway, it's really bad. But anyway. So, but James did a talk. Now the 2 years I went, James had to leave because it was in November. What does James do in the fall? He does weather stuff for the University of Alabama football team when they're at home. Well, the 2 weekends, 2011 and 2012, Alabama was playing at home. So James, after he was like, "Yay, here I am, woohoo," he left. I never got to talk to him, except for Polygon. But now that it's in the spring, that's better because now he has to stay there, and he was there the whole time. His talk, because he does the talk where he yells and screams and throws things, more or less. And I'll mention that everybody needs to watch. Excuse me, his talk, because I've watched his talk. It's the same thing. But he yells and screams about April 27th now because he's like angry, and I think he has a right to. So, but he mentions about when he sees the people, especially the family, the one girl that died that was 2 weeks from graduating from Alabama, and her parents came and took her diploma, and he showed the picture of them, and James said, and this is poignant because. And I'll get into this a little bit after I say this, that James says when he does severe weather coverage, he is doing it because of those people, because he doesn't want to see people get killed and have parents, especially young people that get killed, to have the parents have to put their child on the ground or whatnot. And he could care less if he's interrupting, as he calls it, freak of the week, which I think was funny. Because he would rather interrupt that to save lives, to not have to put some child, precious child in the ground, something like that. And I mean, God bless him, because I mean, he has gotten to the point that he doesn't give a flying bleep, bleep, bleep. And I think at this point in his career, he could care less. He's doing it for a reason, and that is to save people because he's seen too many people killed. So there's that. Now, back to the family. The parents said, "Oh, they're sad. They've lost their child." The person was in Kim Cross's book, "What Stands in a Storm," which I've read multiple times, I might add. Mm-hmm. And the daughter is in that book, as well as several other people from Tuscaloosa. And it's very sad, especially when it's very detailed about lifeless children's bodies, especially when they're young children, like under the age of 3. And it's like really detailed. when I first read the book, I had to stop at that part and put it down because it was very graphic. So what did I do? So then here brings up this funny thing. When I had to babysit my niece on New Year's Eve, I read her What Stands in a Storm. But I did not read her that part. So don't get the idea I read her the part about dead people. The part I read was chapter 5. I don't know, Matt, if you've read that book or not.
I have not.
You mean man. You better read it. Anyway, it was chapter 5. Chapter 5 was Jason Simpson's chapter, when Jason was going into work for the morning event, which most people forget. And I got to tell to my niece about the virtues of what Jason Simpson cooked in his George Foreman grill that morning. That's how detailed it is.
Wow.
He knew what was on Jason Simpson's George Foreman grill. I might add, it was sausage links, bacon, and some other things, and he had coffee, which he needed because he was coughing all through the morning event, because the morning event is on YouTube. And
yes, it is.
Quite a bit of it. But anyway, like I am, because my throat's getting dried out.
Mine is too.
It's the low humidity. Anyway. And it was so detailed that this is what was going to happen on that afternoon. Jason and his wife Lacey, because Lacey, Jason's wife, I don't like going into personal people's lives, but Kim Cross did. Lacey, Jason's wife, was going to find out what their sex of their child was going to be that day. Mind you, it was a boy. And he knew he was going to have to miss it because severe weather, they don't care when it comes. That's how detailed it was. And Jason he was like, oh my gosh, and all that stuff. I got to the end of the chapter and my niece fell asleep. It's like, yep, that's
wow.
She didn't want to listen anymore about the virtues of Jason. The funny thing about that was, because I had to watch her New Year's Eve, because she was at my mom's, and my mom was at a New Year's Eve thing. So I watched her. I took her downstairs and had her watch old polygons. Oh my God, that was a mistake. She didn't want to listen to the people. She wanted to see the still pictures of the people looking crazy. Because if you do still pictures, it would be like people closing eyes and weird things. So she stopped when Jason was on. Because Jason Simpson was on with Mike Wilhelm. They were on show 8 or 9, I don't remember. On Polygon. And he was like doing all these sort of weird faces. My niece laughed because it was funny. She's 6. I mean, but yeah, Jason and his wife, they now have 3 kids now. Wow. And I've tried to get Jason back on, but they've had a lot of health issues with Brody, which is their third, their child now, their latest. That Brody's had to have lots of surgeries at the Children's Hospital of Alabama in Birmingham. So, because that was the episode Jason was on, was to have him and Mike Wilhelm, because Mike Wilhelm took the video of Tuscaloosa's tornado. That you've probably seen. He and John Brown, Mike Wilhelm and John Brown were together on April 27th. And they took that tornado video when they're on the interstate and the tornado goes by on the background. I'm sure you see that video. That's Mike Wilhelm and John Brown's video.
Yes. And
they were together that night because that episode so happened to coincide. That episode was the Friday before the Tupelo tornado. Because that episode was right before the April 28th, 2014 outbreak. Because the reason that Mike and Jason were together was because they were discussing what was going to happen the following Monday, which was April 28th. So, poignant that it happened to occur then, but... So, I don't want to go into old episodes of Polygon, but...
I think highlighting John Brown and Mike Wilhelm is always a good thing to do, because they are kind of the reason why I started chasing the way I am chasing now.
Yeah.
That's what I want. If nobody's seen any of that video, go search them on YouTube. They both have YouTube channels. You can search their coverage. You can search their videos through the ABC 3340 coverage of that day. Flat out, those guys were heroes that day. I'd
mention, Rob, to interrupt, or to kind of interrupt, that John Brown did actually stream last night during the winter storm too, but you can continue.
Yes, he did. But he showed the Tuscaloosa tornado a solid 45 minutes before it had even entered Tuscaloosa city limits, when it was down by Demopolis. And
which one are we discussing? Because if you're talking about the Tuscaloosa tornado that was taken from Knoxville, that's John Olshoe.
That was John Olshoe?
John
okay.
Brown and Mike Wilhelm were coming back into Tuscaloosa from the storm that was to the north, which was the Cordova tornado.
Yep. I got the 2 flip-flop. My apologies. They streamed even that video of the Cordova tornado a solid, I think that was a half hour before
they were in Pickensville.
Those tornadoes got to Cordova and Phil Campbell and that area where it did its most intense damage.
Yeah, Phil Campbell with the Hackleburg tornado. That was in Marion County. There's so many tornadoes from that day, you're getting them all confused. Which I don't blame you, because there's too many. 62 of them. Now you get them.
I have not slept well either, because I dealt with a bit of sickness myself this week. But either way, the point is, those people, those 5 or 6 core people that did the bulk of the streaming that day on James Spann's channel, they showed people with no shadow of a doubt, with absolutely no uncertain terms, that something deadly was happening, and it was happening right now, and it wasn't going to go away here in a couple minutes. It was going to stay. It was going to stay on the ground. It wasn't going to weaken. It was probably going to do nothing but get stronger, and people needed to do something. And I think they saved countless hundreds, if not thousands, of lives because of that. Because had the Skycam networks not been up and those guys not streaming, then we would have been looking at a Hurricane Katrina death toll. I have no qualms with saying that, because a lot of violent tornadoes went through a lot of densely populated areas. I mean, the first couple that popped to my mind are some of the largest cities in Alabama: Coleman, Tuscaloosa, Birmingham. I mean, that's just 2 tornadoes, 3 cities. And those are the largest metropolitan areas in the state of Alabama. Who knows how many people would have been killed had those people not been doing what they were doing that day. So I think anytime that they can be given credit, I think it's good. And I'm taking that quite a few steps further. I'm trying to kind of emulate them and trying to help get word out, because that's all they do. They don't have up to 1 million followers on YouTube. They don't advertise clickbait, video titles. They're modest channels that have some good video and then a little bit of absolutely insane video. They do it humbly, is what I'm trying to say. They're not looking for the Google AdSense dollars. They're looking to just show what they've seen. And that's it.
They're in it for the good reasons, not the bad ones.
They're fighting that good fight. They're not just trying to get money.
It's all well to get money, but not the main purpose.
Well,
but because you have to pay to do this, but if you don't have to, it's like it's fine to get it, but if you don't, that's fine because you're doing it for the purpose of warning people to get. Here's the video. Here you go. I don't charge. Yay! There it is.
Yes.
Sort of like that. That's what we're getting after. So
yeah. There's nothing wrong with trying to swim chase as a business. You have to, if you decide to go that route, you got to do a lot. But I think there's a certain attitude that goes with that, and this is kind of getting a little off subject, but I think it speaks more towards the solidness of their character. That because they weren't in it for the dollar, excuse me, because that those guys weren't in it for the dollars, they put themselves in a position where they can do what they originally sought out to do, which was warn people. Had they been out there for the money, yeah, maybe that day they still would have produced the same impact that they actually did. But I think that would have come secondary. And I don't think that's exactly the best. But that's just my way of thinking. That's not me dogging on anybody. There's a lot of good people that do chase for a living, and that's totally fine. That's totally okay.
Yeah.
What is that?
Who's that?
I said,
oh
what
my
is
God.
That? I said, what is that?
Oh, I thought you were going to say, who's that? This, I happened to just bring up Jason and Mike Wilhelm's episode because I brought it up.
Very cool.
Jason has less hair now. and I did get after Mike Wilhelm for wearing a Texas Rangers shirt that day. So I got him on that.
Hey, it's okay.
He's a big Braves and Cubs fan, so he was, well, his son is a big Cubs fan because he's like, because and I could go on to Mike Wilhelm for a little bit because you think he's like the down home Southerner because he went to school in Huntsville. So that's where I can't even tell you where he lives because I know that, but that's kind of creepy. Anyway, his family is from Illinois because his parents got married in Ottawa, Illinois, which really? I know is just east of the Quad Cities. It's between just west of Chicago because that's where his thing to Illinois comes from. So he has the Southern type attitude with the Midwestern type. Oh, I want to talk to you. That, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and John, because I've actually seen both John and Mike, not in person except because John makes a point that when Storm Alert Extreme occurs, and we're back to this again, he goes because James even said John Brown could do the spotter training because he's been trained so much, he could do it. And he may look gruff and he looks like somebody that could punch me in the face.
Who, John Brown?
Good, because he could, but he's not. Unless you piss him off, but you would really have to really piss him off to get him to be angry at you. But he just looks like he could beat me up. But I know he's not because he's doing it for the right reasons. Because he's always like, because God bless him, because he takes a lot of his time away from his family because he has kids to go out there and do that. So, and that in a couple of this is funny about John. I'm sorry because John's never been on this show because I kind of am afraid of him still. Anyway, but that he had his own segment during, because 3340 used to do this used to be back in the day when they would have these half-hour specials and severe weather time. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Severe weather specials that nobody does anymore, seemingly. some people do specials, especially for hurricanes now still, but like severe weather.
Like April 27th, 5 years later type thing.
That was a different thing. That was the documentary that 3340 did last year, which I also watched. I already watched that.
Yeah, that was good. That was good.
Yeah, I would say if they don't win because I don't know if they've gotten an Emmy for that, a regional Emmy, because I think everything is like delayed because I think that year will be for the Emmys next year. So if they don't win an Emmy for that, then the Emmy people in Atlanta are stupid because that's where the region Alabama is included. It's in Atlanta. But anyway, I digress. We're going slightly off topic, sort of. But anyway, they used to have the severe weather show on 3340. In 2009's severe weather, John Brown is in there. And I looked at that and I went, oh my God, that is not him. Why? Because I'm sure you know what John Brown looks like.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Of course I do.
Yeah. Take out the beard.
Really?
He had no facial hair.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my God, who's that?
He had a pretty glorious man beard there. I don't know if I'd want to get rid of that.
No, he hadn't grown it yet.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, because he was showing off his truck, because he was like, ooh, I have stuff in my truck, and I'm going out, because this was in 2009, and he was doing this stuff with Span.
Okay.
Because he's been doing it for that long, even longer. Because I think it was 2009 when John Brown met Mike Wilhelm. Because that's when they met, and that's when they teamed up to be the Alabama duo of storm chasing until the evil Jason Simpson stole him. Because now Mike Wilhelm works for Jason Simpson's station, which makes sense because Mike Wilhelm lives in Huntsville. Yeah. But anyway, but I digress. That he did a segment and it creeped me out because it's like, oh my gosh, it doesn't look like him. And I'm gonna find it because I have to go and find it because I just had it up and then I got rid of it, so I'm gonna go back and look at it again. Wait, I just look at my history because I already have it. Yay, I can look at my history. God, this is not gonna. Here it is. John Brown's thing. So I'll send you the clip. I have it muted, so it's not gonna. I might just show it because I don't know why we're going on to what John Brown looked like 8 years ago, but evidently we're going on to this now. I don't.
Okay. That's okay. We can go that. We can do that because I have a bit of a question in the form of a rant that is tied to who we're speaking with.
Are we ranting about John Brown or about something else about John Brown?
Not those people specifically, but he was very close to April 27th and all of those people involved.
Okay.
Well, there's two people. One's funny and one's kind of serious.
Before we get to that, that's what John Brown looked like in 2009.
Wow. He looks like me like 8 years ago.
And then, of course, as you can see in the lower left, that's John Brown from about a year ago. I mean, I'm sorry. The face is about the same, but I'm thinking this guy looks like he's in his 20s. And the guy down here looks like he's in his maybe he's like a couple years older than me. And then this guy looks like, oh my gosh, when you grow, my God. And the fact that
he's got a pretty glorious man beard in that cover photo.
Well, and the fact that that's his truck. I was like, the older Silverado. I don't think he has this anymore. I think he got something new. But I'm like,
SUV now. The last I heard.
Yeah, he has an SUV now. But I'm like, this was his old rig. Like, but anyway, I digress. You can keep going because I just wanted to. So.
But there's two people that are tied to April 27th that I want to find out about. The first is the more serious one. I'll finish up with the funny one. First person is very specifically Dr. Tim Coleman.
Okay.
And the reason why I say Dr. Tim is because I remember the first episode of Weather Brains, and I think you already know where I'm going.
Yeah.
With this, Jeff.
Yeah. I know what you're going after.
He mentioned some email communication. In the couple hours prior to April 20th, the afternoon round.
He was getting it that afternoon, and he got it when he got home. And
yeah.
Yep, I know where you're going.
It was sent at like 1 o'clock or something like that, but he got it.
One was sent at 3. It was at 3.
Yeah. But I would like to know whatever happened to that. And more specifically, he made a couple of comments. He started going on, and this is what led to that little diatribe where he mentioned that email. He was going on about some of the meteorology of the event, because the person that commented before was Bill Murray, and they were in the section of the show where they were kind of looking at meteorological things, specific meteorological features or things that they observed that really stuck out to them. And Bill Murray had mentioned him seeing about a 5-mile wide strip of clouds on the satellite, and he overlaid the satellite view that he was seeing that with dew point observations, and he noticed that it was the low-level jet showing up into the area, because that strip of clouds would blow by, and then within an hour or two, the dew points would skyrocket 9 or 10 degrees at all stations.
Yeah.
After that, Dr. Tim started mentioning something. I don't remember what specifically.
You might have to go back and listen to that episode.
Yeah, I will have to go back and listen. But he started mentioning some of the things that he was noticing in terms of, he didn't say anything specific. We started, because I could tell by the way he was talking that he was kind of talking himself down his own rabbit hole. So it was like a rabbit hole within a rabbit hole during that show, it seemed like to me. But he started talking about capes and stuff like that, and soundings that the various weather service offices in the region were doing, and some of the observations that he noticed with those soundings and those observations and stuff. I would really like to see some of those observations from that day, and what he thought about them, what role he thought that those played into it on the smaller scale of things. Because everybody knows that April 27th was pretty much a textbook tornado day. I mean, you could lay out the conditions on that day inside of a textbook.
Oh, yeah, they could probably do. I mean, they've done, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but April 27th type stuff, a lot of it has been about the people. Like Kim Cross's book, there's one about Alabama, the university getting better thing. But there really hasn't been, that I know of, really a forthright discussion on the event itself, a book about that there needs to be in a book. Now, it's all well and fine for the people, because the people are the people who died, that they were precious people. But we almost
Which needs to happen. Don't get us wrong. That needs to happen. Because, I'm sorry, I'm going to sidetrack us for 5 seconds and I'll stop, I promise. That needs to happen.
Yeah.
A lot of bad things happen that shouldn't have. And that needed to be highlighted. And it did. So on that, go on.
Okay, because I was like, but like, for example, there is a lot of when I was just, because I was books that I want to get but I'm going to have to figure out how if I want to get them. There's a lot of stuff about the Joplin tornado, which occurred later.
Yeah,
about
the meteorology of it.
and about what happened, and it's really good when there's one author. Oh, I want to get this guy on maybe later this into this year. He wrote about the tornado. Then he wrote about the corruption that occurred after the tornado. It's like, okay, this guy decided to keep going. What happened after the event? Everybody's like on the event, the end. They don't talk about the aftermath. This guy did. He kept going because there was corruption, and it was like big time. So, and he wrote like numerous books about that, which was a little nuts. But April 27th, and I kind of went off track a little bit. At April 27th, there are so many tornadoes because you look at April 3rd, 74, which is an analog to this event.
Correct.
There's a few books about April 3rd and 4th, 74. A few. I know the F5 book by Mark Levine is one, which I don't have, which I wish I get. There's several books about some of the tornadoes that occurred, like Xenia. I have one of the books about the Louisville tornado that occurred on that day in 74. I mean, there's not, and then of course there's the small little video that the Weather Service made, or NOAA made, through some branch that's the day of the killer tornadoes, and it's really funny because it's totally hilarious. Because they have to reenact everything, so it looks really funny. And I know that several of the people that are in that film are dead already, because I know that. But
R.I.P. Al Mohler.
No, that's wrong. That's the wrong part. That's Terrible Tuesday. Al Mohler was in the Terrible Tuesday.
Oh, that's right. You are right.
Al Mohler when he had dark hair. But I'm talking about on the day of the killer tornadoes. And I have to go off on this because this is funny.
Okay, you do that, and then I will go into my second person.
Okay, but April. Okay, this is a video. This was a videotape, which I don't need now because everything's on here. It had 3 things on it. The first thing that was on it was Terrible Tuesday. And then the second part was the old Spotter's Guide video from the 70s, which is old-fashioned, and it's on YouTube. In fact, all 3 of them are. And then the day of the killer tornadoes was the 3rd. So all of these are like public domain. So you could play them. I could play the whole thing right now and get away with it because it's public domain because it was government.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Now, when they had to do the reenactment for Day of Killer Tornadoes, some of it was reenacted. When they did the part from Louisville at the radio station, the 2 people that you see are both dead. One is the DJ of the radio station, Jeff Douglas. He's dead. The other who did the warning stuff was Chuck Paddock, and he just recently died. And I tried to get Chuck Paddock on Polygon about 3 years ago, and I couldn't get him.
Oh, that would have been good.
He was the person who was on the phone. If you listen to the WHAS video, when he was talking to John Burke at the Weather Service in Louisville, when the tornado hit the airport where the Weather Service was, and he had to get off the phone, and Chuck Paddock was on the phone with him, and Chuck just recently died. The only person that I know that is still alive is the news director, and that's Glenn Baston, and he's still alive to this day. And I think Byron Crawford, who was the news reader. Byron Crawford, and both he and Glenn Baston. Glenn Baston's with the Kentucky Colonels. He's like a big wig, you know. He's like really old though. Byron Crawford was at WHAS in television after the radio for a long time. He then hosted the show in Kentucky on public television for a long time, and he's retired from the business now. Still lives in Kentucky. Tried to get him on, nope. So. But anyway,
that effort.
And I tried to do that. That was several years ago. But anyway, I digress because these people are dying right and left. So,
okay, my second person that I would love to hear more about, and John Oldshoe actually mentioned this in this person in the first episode of Weather Brains after April 27th.
Uh-oh, I know what you're talking about again.
Australian septic tank guy.
First thing I'd want to know is where was he, and I'd want to find the building. The one where you ruined it, you're gonna pay. I remember that. That's the only part I remember about that episode was John Oldshoe going into some crazy weird accent that didn't sound right. It's like,
well, he was trying to imitate the guy's accent, and he admitted it on the show. He's like, I have no idea how this guy sounded. I'm gonna just kind of wing it and do my best.
I loved it. That's one thing I remember about that episode, because it was kind of really sad, and you needed a little bit of humor in it, because you don't want to get everybody depressed, because I don't think it would have made anybody feel better. And to talk about it, yes, but I mean, Span didn't talk about it for 6 months. And I'm wondering if all that built up to the point that the reason why now he's angry. And he has every right to, but I'm almost wondering, and this would probably be a show I would have to do. I have to talk to weather people, to some meteorologists about this. Psychological things about people having what I would consider, like, for example, post-traumatic stress syndrome.
I would say without a shadow of a doubt that there are a lot of people in TV, James included, that has some sort of post-traumatic stress because of April 27th.
Yeah.
And I think because James is who he is, and he's the type of person that just cares about the people that he gets on the air for every night.
Yeah, like the parents of the dead children. Yeah.
Yeah, he legitimately, pardon my French, he legitimately gives a shit. That's the best way that I can express it.
Yeah.
And it's not in the casual way. I mean, he really gives a shit, because that's why during Snowpocalypse, like we talked about before, he went onto Facebook and onto YouTube and issued his own apology. He apologized to his people for screwing it up because he cares. Now, and this is coming from a person that does, and I will openly admit it, that does suffer from post-traumatic stress for multiple reasons. I see a lot of the same things with James's talks, and it only comes out in James's talks. So maybe he's learned how to deal with it, and that's his way of getting it out.
Yeah.
But I've seen some of those signs of post-traumatic stress in his talks. That's why I think he does get angry. But where I think he's doing good is that he's channeling the anger. He's channeling it
good way.
into a positive. He's trying to turn that dark negative into a positive, which is the biggest sign of someone that has processed a traumatic event in their life properly. They take the negative emotion that they feel, whether it's anger, depression, XYZ, whatever it is, they take it, they channel it into something that they can do something about, where they can get it out and they can get some good out of it. And that's where I think those talks came from. And I think it took him that long. And this is me speculating. I'm not saying that he's crazy, but I think he most likely, based on my experience, and Mr. Span, if you hear this 10 years from now, I'm not speculating. I don't know, because I don't know you, but I'm just trying to relate based on my own experience. He probably spoke to people about it, professionals. He probably sought out some help, which is a good thing. I'm not trying to say that's a bad thing, because people that go through things like that, if they can't process it, they need help.
Yeah.
They need to be able to figure out how to process it. And that process, I think, of him figuring out how to deal with his emotions and everything that goes with that, it probably took him quite a while.
Yeah.
And that's why I think you saw him not say anything for 6 months, because he was so deeply affected. And because he was so deeply affected, he sought out help and he figured out a way, using that time wisely, he figured out a way to turn the negative to a positive. So I'm not, again, Mr. Span, if you hear this 10 years from now in 2027, I'm not digging on you. I'm saying I think you did a good thing. And I think you'll probably agree.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that, and this brings up a point. I'm sorry. I feel like this show has gone crazily wacky. This is what happens when we go 2 weeks with no show. But we go back, talking about April 27th. There's one event that I think led to somebody quitting. Because, and I think it was, and I know it was from.
Are you saying April 27th?
No, I'm saying another event similar.
Oh, okay.
And I'm speaking to this so because Gary England retired. Why? Because of El Reno and the Moore tornado. The May of 2013. Because, and I remember this because this wait,
hold on. Are you speaking more May 20th or more May 31st?
Well, I think May 20th led to what happened on El Reno Day, because on the El Reno Day, after El Reno's tornado had occurred and there was fatalities, including, unfortunately, children being killed on the interstate. I remember, because this is from an episode, I think Gary was either on Weatherbrains or something, where he said after that occurred, he called his wife and said, pick me up and take me home. That's why because I remember watching the coverage, because I was watching.
That was Weatherbrains, and he did that show on his knees in the dark.
Yes. and the thing is, right then, he said he was going to quit and retire right then, because he was actually going to keep doing television until his contract ended. His contract right now is technically not even over yet. It would have ended I think it would have ended last year or something like that. He decided to end not then, but that summer, to let David Payne come and do it and take over, which is all well and fine. But I think the thing is, that I think led to Gary England's earlier retirement than he did. Because right now, Gary now works at OU. That's his now retirement job. He's at OU. It's like, oh, my retirement's OU.
Which is not a bad place to retire to if you're a weather nerd.
So, I mean.
And he's the biggest one of them all. I'm sorry, I love James Spann, but I think Gary England's probably the biggest weather nerd in this country.
And when you think, and I could go off on this, because this is, and it would be interesting about post-traumatic stress in terms of weather events. I mean, in Oklahoma City, there's like tornadoes like all the time. And I'm thinking, and I should have discussed this because I've had several people on, but I'm thinking, you look at the infamous episode of Weather Brains 404. Mike Morgan's in it.
Yeah.
Mike Morgan, and this is funny. Storm Alert Extreme. Back to that again. James Spann mentions Mike Morgan's episode of Weather Brains as saying that was the craziest, wackiest episode ever. And I still think that probably is true. That it's the weirdest and oddest episode. Because Mike Morgan was almost like he was defending himself. It made it look like that maybe Mike Morgan was having post-traumatic stress and he was dealing with it wrong, or kind of wrong. Because it's strange when you have events like this. And I've had so many people on Polygon. Now this makes me think I need to have these people on to talk about post-traumatic stress and weather.
I've been wanting to do something like that for a very long time.
Because
I'm going to take us further into this rabbit hole, because I really do think that there are people in weather service TV that, they see these things live, like Gary England. You saw May 20th happen live in front of him.
From the helicopter, yeah.
Yeah. James Spann saw April 27th happen live from multiple power cams and chasers and reports and everything. You know, Mike Morgan, same thing.
Yep.
You know, I could name off probably 20. You could probably name off 30.
Yeah.
Meteorologists that have covered extremely deadly severe weather events, or just weather events in general, not just, you know, storms and tornadoes, but just deadly weather disasters that personally affected them in a very, very strong way. And I think that needs to be spoken about almost in the same guise as veterans returning home from combat, because there's a lot of the same things happening in a newsroom or a weather service office that happens in combat. It's chaos. There's a lot of things happening. You can't, you know, one person can't process it all at one time. You know, there's a lot of chaos. There's a term for it. It's called the fog of war. And that fog of war, I think, creates a lot of this stress because, you know, it's the fear of the unknown. What's going to happen next? We don't know. Oh, geez. But I think that needs to be highlighted and addressed. I think the mental and emotional well-being of these people that deal with these weather disasters need to be brought to the forefront.
Yeah.
Am I the right person? Maybe, maybe not. I mean, I've dealt with stressful weather situations. I've dealt with combat and stuff like that, and it's whatever, you know. But I think it needs to be brought up. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be talked about openly. It can't be a hush-hush thing. That's kind of the thing that I'm seeing is, you know, the stresses and rigors that these people that are doing the work day in, day out, left, right, up, and down, I think they're going through a lot of stresses that I don't think they're getting to deal with. And that needs to be addressed, because if we are going to expect more out of them, then they need to be better balanced people.
Yeah.
They need to have the opportunity to deal with what their transgressions are. And having those transgressions is not a bad thing. That's the first thing that needs to be addressed. Having those transgressions is not a bad thing. That is a completely normal and human thing. If people weren't affected by these things, I would be genuinely worried.
Yeah.
Because that is the first sign of some serious mental trouble.
Yeah.
So I think that that possible stigma that I think might be coming up in the professional weather community of, you know, not being able to process these stressful and traumatic weather events, I think those need to be addressed. And the people dealing with them, you know, the boots on the ground, on the front line, so to speak, they need to be talked to. They need to be asked, are you okay? How are you dealing with this? Are you doing this? Are you doing that? Are you being healthy? Because if they're not healthy, when the next event comes, then when the next event comes, when it's all said and done, they're going to be even worse off mentally. And who knows what could happen from there. So I think that's something that we as a weather enterprise, I guess is the best word to put it, need to be very cognizant of that coming up, because weather's not going to stop.
Yeah. It waits for nobody.
Yep.
And I think, I don't know how we've gotten on this, but it's probably very good. But what probably did help in some cases was, for example, in 2011, that in the South, after April 27th, there was nothing. The severe weather threat was pretty much minimal after that. They had some severe thunderstorms, but they had nothing. It was pretty much dead until the January event in 2012, that late night, early morning event.
Yep.
But they hadn't had anything similar to that till the April 28th, 2014 event, which was nothing like April 27th. Because, like Span says, he's not going to say, is it like April 27th? I wouldn't even, and he's not going to answer it because I don't think he should. Because, I mean, you can't compare everything to something that's a generational event. I mean, a generational event, I mean, I could bring up this. I mean, could it happen in 5 years? Could it happen in 40? I mean, we just had a flood in Cedar Rapids in September. That was the second worst flood ever. And this was only 8 years after the worst flood. I mean, you can have generational events, but it doesn't mean it has to occur. It couldn't occur earlier or within 5 years. I mean, you could have one now, then one in 40 years, and then another in 5, and then another in 60. I mean, that's how it
Correct.
Averages out. But,
the next one is coming.
Yeah, and the thing is,
once that last tornado lifted on April 28th, 2011, once that last tornado lifted, the clock reset.
I honestly think that April 28th, 2014 was this is what I would consider. Because I meant April 27th, 2011 event's generational. Once every roughly 40 years. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
April 28th, 2014 is one of those once every 10 years. Because it's not as bad. The tornadoes, there was quite a few of them, but they were not as strong. There was a couple strong ones, but a lot of them were weaker and not as long lasting. That's like one every maybe 10 years, maybe 5 to 10 years. And there's a lot of them. You may get a couple of them. And then there's like the events that occurred earlier last year. I'm still in 2017 now. Last year's events. There was a couple in 2016 that were like what you would see normal. You get a few of them a year. You get maybe a couple tornadoes on a day, and they might be strong, they might not. You have the November outbreak that they had on the 29th, which killed some people in Northeast Alabama. And you had the event a couple of days ago that was down by Dothan that killed 4 or 5 people. Those are the type of events that occur a couple of times a year where you get a couple of tornadoes. And that's why Matt just disappeared. And I'm still talking.
I'm back.
Okay. Yeah, because I was about to respond back to what you said. Anyway, so I don't know where it froze, probably at a good part. But I was like saying, with all the events we've had over the last year or so, these minimalistic events that are like a couple tornadoes, this is like the ones you'd normally see every year, a couple times a year. The ones that maybe will produce maybe a handful of tornadoes. Some of them might be strong. I mean, like the November event that it killed people in Northeast Alabama, like I mentioned, that's a type of event you'll see. That's the type of what you would call quote unquote typical event. Yeah. Or like the thing that occurred in near Dothan, Alabama last week that killed 4 or 5 people. That's a normal typical event where it's like a few tornadoes. You're not going to see these 62 tornadoes on April 27th, 2011. Or I think Alabama on April 28th, 2014 had 30 some. And most of them were many of them were after about 8 or 9 o'clock at night.
But here's the great equalizer, though, with all that.
Yeah, because
you had April 27th,
which was all daytime.
That had 62. But 10 days before that, they had April 15th. 12 days before that, which had 40-some.
Yeah, April 15th.
Before April 27th was Alabama's state record.
Now here's this is interesting because we're going off on this, but this was telling, and this is on YouTube. It's a small little tiny what I would call quote unquote typical event again. It was in 2011, March 26th. It's on YouTube. It's on John Brown's YouTube channel because he was chasing that day. James Spann mentions We are due for a tornado outbreak. He said this twice in the event. Our time is running out. He said that. And I thought, oh my God, it's almost like an omen that he knew something was going to come and he didn't know when, and he didn't realize it was going to be. He thought April 15th. Oh my gosh, April 15th. And it was like, oh my gosh, goody, oh lordy, tornadoes. And the death toll was what, like 15, 16?
Yeah.
And it's
low.
like, okay, everybody's great. April 27th occurs, 250 people die in Alabama, 252, and then in total it's 300 some. And everybody's like, oh my gosh. Now, what James mentions back in Star Alert again, which is almost why I need to go to this, because I wonder if he's still going to do these talks, probably. He mentions, and this is something that I think that I might have gotten through to him on Polygon, when he was on Polygon Show 3. I don't remember that show very well because that was almost 3 years ago. But anyway, I got to the point of saying there are some people that will not do a damn, sorry for French, damn thing because they will not take care of themselves. And James now does in his talk is there are people, they will not take care of themselves. They will not do anything unless some government person pulls them and puts them in the basement. Those people can't be helped. And I'm thinking that I think I got through to James on that, saying there are people, you cannot feel so bad when there are people that will not take care of themselves. They will not go into the basement. They're not going to do anything. They die. And because it's their fault. And I'm thinking, and he even said this in the talk, that he's kind of like saying, how many of those people were those type people? I mean, you don't know. There's people that die, it's their time. But then there's people that if they're not going to do anything and they died, well, you can't save them. They're not going to.
You're right. They're not going to that too during there was a TED talk that he did a couple weeks after April 27th at I think the University of Alabama. There was a TED talk that he did just a couple weeks after, where he said, you know, I think, and I'm about 99.9% sure that I'm quoting verbatim. I think the death toll that day should have been about 30.
Yep, that's
all of them.
All this
were in Phil Campbell, and places like Hackleburg, Phil Campbell, Cordova. You know, people where even though they did everything right, the intensity of the tornado was so immensely ginormous that it just horribly didn't matter.
You know,
it was their day. I think those were his words. It was just their day.
Yep, he still says that to this day too.
But that speaks to that. To your point, he thinks the death toll should have been about 30. That means that there's
in Alabama, we should mention, not for the whole event, but in Alabama.
Yeah, in Alabama. That means that there are 222 people in Alabama that had access, that were able to do something, and had they done the right thing, that they probably would have survived.
Or if they had listened. But that brings up back to the social media thing where I was like, that I'm glad they're getting into doing that, because the problem I see is that it's getting to be too social. I mean, it brings up the point that you can only go on social science so far, because you cannot, that group of people that will not listen to you, you can't help them. So there's no reason to even bother. I mean, it's going to take like people pulling them to the basement to get them to do anything. And they can social science that to death. Those people aren't going to go to the basement when a tornado warning is issued.
Yeah.
They can make the warnings different. They could make this, that. They can tell people. They can show it on a screen. The thing is, those people won't do anything. And if they died, you couldn't help them. you shouldn't be blamed for their death. But the problem is, how do you know that you could have? You don't know that. So then, I mean, it's kind of like a battle between who wants the help and who doesn't care. There's a battle, and when you
that
think
is true.
And when you think that Alabama leads in tornado deaths since 1950 and has since the April 27th event, they added more because of the event a couple of days ago. I mean, and I'm not dissing on Southerners because a lot of Southern states are in the top 15. Notably, Iowa's not on that list, thank goodness. But, I mean, it's sad that a lot of the problem is in Alabama, and I think it's the case of the South. The misconception is that I think I'll get it out. The false alarm ratio, which is now much lower, thank goodness. There's been too much of the cry wolf syndrome, which I think is slowly going away. There's hills and trees, you can't see anything, and people are going to be like, I'm going to go outside and see if I can see it. And they're not going to, and when they see it, it's too late, they're dead.
I need to stop you there for a second.
Oh, goody, I probably just pissed off somebody.
No, actually, there's some people that need to be shouted out.
I thought you were going to start saying that there was going to be people that were going to yell at me or something.
No, I think there's people that need to be shouted out, and they were on Weather Brains this last episode. There were a couple people. The Sue from NWS Birmingham was on.
Kevin Laws.
Yes.
He did. He was at Storm Alert Extreme last year too, because he was there.
Yes, he was, and he pointed out that they are now, at this day and age, at this point in time, they now have had as many tornadoes in the 7 years before April 27th as they have had after April 27th. And he brought out some pretty shocking numbers. In the 7 years before April 27th, with the same number of tornadoes, NWS Birmingham issued, I think he said, 534 tornado warnings.
Yeah.
In the 7 years after, or in that same number of tornadoes after April 27th, they've only issued like 150.
Yeah.
So they've dropped that warning to tornado ratio way down. The FAR is down 80%.
Yeah,
I think was the hard number that he gave.
Yeah.
For all weather warnings, severe thunderstorm, flash flood, all the warnings that, were included in that math.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can't complain, people, if James Spann is interrupting Freak of the Week because they're issuing less of them now. It's not like Spann's fault that they're issuing tornado warnings. I mean, they're issuing a heck of a lot less.
That is exactly the point that I'm getting to. That means that the warnings that are coming out now
are more serious.
They should be they need to be respected and paid attention to because they really do understand that there's something real there. Or
about to be, in some cases.
Yes.
Because they issue the warning and then it comes down. Because that happened. And this brings up a point, because this goes back to the event back at the end of November, where they were like, oh, and this is from another stream of somebody down in Birmingham, where they're like, well, they're about to issue a severe thunderstorm warning for so-and-so. Because they were doing a cut-in. There was no tornado warning. And they were going to issue a severe thunderstorm warning for a storm. So he was like talking, and about 3 minutes later, they issued a tornado warning for a storm that wasn't even severe warned yet. And it was like, they may issue a severe thunderstorm warning. May issue. They issued a tornado warning. 2 or 3 minutes after that, there's a tornado on the ground.
Yep.
And that storm went on to produce, I think, 3 tornadoes in a span of 2 hours. All weak, but one of them was very wide. It was a wide, weaker tornado, but it was like, oh my gosh, tornadoes. So every warning they did, Birmingham, because there was Weather Service Birmingham, they got it right because they thought, okay, this is starting to spin up, issue a tornado warning. It immediately produced a tornado within minutes. Now, that's not good with lead time, but it's better to not issue a tornado warning than nothing happens and then everybody's pissed that, oh, you interrupted Freak of the Week. Now I'm pissed. I'm not going to listen to tornado warnings ever again. So,
well,
they did.
I think you're going to have those people anyways.
Well, yeah, you're going to piss off people even if there's a tornado on the ground. But
yeah. And I think James has done a very good job of dismissing them. In fact, during the coverage of this most recent event, he literally called them out on the air. On the air, he said, "This is all I'm going to say about it," and then he went and called them out and said what he was going to do, and then left it at that, and then went right back into the coverage, went right back to business.
Yeah, because
after that, I didn't hear of anybody really trying to troll or hate on him.
Oh, there probably is. They just don't see it.
What's that?
Because he mentions that in the Storm Alert Extreme video too, about the trolls, haters, and know-alls.
Yeah.
But I mean, we seem to be going on this for a long time, but that it just seems to be that when April 27th happened, anytime there was for the next about year and a half, 2 years, probably through all of 2012, everybody I think was like, tornado warning. Oh, we're serious crap now. They were not freaking out about, oh, my program's off the air, because that syndrome seems to be like they pay attention, they go to shelter. Oh my gosh, you know what I mean? I think it was April 28th, 2014, when that syndrome ended. In most cases, because some people started getting a little bit uppity. Even if there was tornadoes, they started getting a little uppity. And then it got really bad when James Spann had to interrupt on Christmas 2 years ago, Christmas of 2015, and he interrupted NBA basketball and was like, oh, you interrupted my game. Get off the air. There was a tornado on the ground, and he was getting yelled at and saying he should have been aborted and all this stuff. It's like, okay, evidently April 27th syndrome's gone now. Everybody's uppity. They want to watch their shows. And that's the case anywhere there's like bad weather. I mean, if you don't have it for a while, people start going, where's my show? I don't hear anybody in Oklahoma complain. Oklahoma City, it's like if there's a little spit thunderstorm, they're on the air. Every station's on the air, and they're interrupting program. You're lucky if you're able to see any shows in Oklahoma City from April to June, because it's probably nonstop severe weather coverage. Oh, the sun is out. Oh, live coverage. I mean, that's how bad it is. This happened on an event. This, I believe, was El Reno Day. On El Reno, now the El Reno tornado occurred at 6 o'clock at night, something about like that. They started coverage of El Reno at 3. There wasn't even a thunderstorm in Oklahoma then, and they started coverage at 3 o'clock. Talk about overblowing everything. I started watching it about 4. I think it was about 4. It might have been about an hour later. The thunderheads were starting to build, and they were showing it. It's like it's sunny and there's little thunderheads blowing up. I'm like, ooh! I'm like, like, why is this on? You're interrupting programming to show a thunderhead. The radar showed little sprinkles, and they're like doing live coverage. They were doing like storm tracks of sprinkles. I thought, oh my God! Now, what ended up happening? Those sprinkles blew up into humongous thunderstorms and produced tornadoes, but they were doing it even before thunderstorms even formed, which is a little strange, but not out of the ordinary. But that's just a little bit nutty. But that's Oklahoma City, and
James went off in Oklahoma City about all the stuff they do now, but so
I agree.
But I mean, I don't know what else we can discuss because I think we're running out of stuff.
Yeah, I think we're running out of rabbit holes.
But yeah, we almost need to do all these. I almost don't want to start interrupting people and email people again because this. I mean, some of these topics you need to start writing these down because we need to start writing these down because there's several topics that that are needing to be discussed with people. I mean, we can discuss them between us to our heart's content, but we're not on TV. I mean, you have having been in the battles of being in wartime, but I mean,
yeah, I think I'm going to start putting down some notes. I think that needs to be our first real big strive.
And I think, and it's not just TV people. Yeah. What about storm chasers?
Yeah.
We bring up the point that what's his face that killed himself. I'm wondering what was his mind in. I mean, we could go off on topics about it. Could be. Yeah. You better write all these down. I mean,
that was the first thing that I was going after too in my head was him. Yeah.
Storm chaser post-traumatic stress. Maybe it's not just on the level of weather people. Maybe it's the people that are in the field too. I mean, yeah. Span was in a studio. Yes, he saw the tornadoes, but he wasn't there to see them actually hit things live. He saw it through a webcam that was kind of freezing because the power was going in and out. But
he's smart enough to know what's really happening.
Yeah.
When things are
for people like John and Mike in Tuscaloosa, or having Skip Talbot, who's been on the program before, or Adam Lucio, who's been on Polygon before. Adam Lucio was almost hit by a tornado about 2 years ago. It broke his back window when he was too close to one of the tornadoes in Nebraska. And Skip Talbot was on twice. It's one of the only people that's been on multiple times. And he did El Reno, and he did a big documentary about that, which I've watched numerous times because it's so interesting. But then there's all the people like Dan Robinson, who was almost hit by the El Reno tornado. He barely escaped from it because he was right in front of his car, I think, when that tornado. I mean,
yeah.
And I still think Dan Robinson lives in St. Louis, last I knew.
And also there's Brandon Sullivan, who had quite the somewhat humorous but still very stressful run-in with a hay bale associated with the winds from the El Reno tornado.
And not like the hay storm that we went through when we were still in your truck before it died in Kansas.
No, this was a straight up hay bale.
Yeah,
a hay bale being blown in front of them and them hitting it head on. And something that weighs over a ton.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, everybody that is involved in severe weather.
Except Reed Timmer, because Reed Timmer would want us to pay for him. So.
Well,
sorry, but
I guarantee you, he's seen some things. I guarantee you, he'll probably never ever show it or talk about it.
Oh, well, no. Okay, we're gonna go down a rabbit hole with this. There is an episode of Storm Chasers that was on Discovery Channel when they went to the Yazoo City tornado. Remember, that was, I think, the first episode of the season, and they showed a guy's lifeless body in Yazoo City, Mississippi. And that was, I think, a tease. I'm thinking, you don't show that crap. The guy wasn't dead. He was very seriously injured. And I think he did live. But I'm like, and I remember, because I think Joel was with them and whatnot, and Joel was freaked out because he was about ready to lose it. And Reed is like this, macho guy. I'm thinking, like you said, Reed has seen stuff that back to the post-traumatic stress. How is he dealing with it? He's driven into tornadoes. And I mean, we could go off on Sean Casey, who was driving through tornadoes with his thing. I mean, we could just go off on tangents to all heck with this. And then we have meteorologists that have gone storm chasing and seen stuff, and like people like Span and all these people that have been in the studio and there's tornadoes and they're killing people and things are flying into the air, stuff like that. I mean, it's the problem we have is getting these people on because of nasty news directors or nasty corporate heads. So, so, I mean, it's, and then there's other stuff. So we need to write all this down. We got to write everything down because I think it needs to be discussed and whatnot. And when you were talking about people that are emotionally affected, the first person when you were talking about that came to mind was Mike Bettis when he went to Joplin, because he came in right after Joplin's tornado had hit. He was right at St. John's, the hospital that got hit. He was in that neighborhood, and somebody was he took him into the neighborhood to look for his mother or something. And I watched that video, and that's kind of frightening. That's even, you almost get post-traumatic stress just watching that. And I only watched it I think once, and I didn't watch it again. It's like
here's another one that I think it would be great to have on, Jeff Petrovsky.
Noted. I have emailed him, and he had said yes to being on. But then but then the problem is he got busy with all the stuff he does for Barron. So he has said yes to being on. It's just I would like to take the reins on that and try and get him on. You might have to send me his email address. I'd have to look for it. I mean, the last time I started looking for guests was about 6-7 months ago, because it was getting to be very difficult, because I have a list of 200 people that didn't respond to my emails. So, and there's even people that we've had on before that I don't think I'd be able to have on now because things have changed in the corporate world. So
yeah, I think he would be great to have on. Because of his experience with
with a gunman or a knife wielding crazy person after the tornado
in Texas. Yeah,
that was half the reason why I asked him to be on. Was about that little incident.
Yeah,
of course, I couldn't mention it because that was in litigation, and who knows if that still is or not. I don't know if it is.
I was just going to say, I'll be the first to say, I don't know how much he'll be able to talk about it because it may still be in court. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I would love to try to get his thoughts and his feelings about what happened and how chasers and storm spotters should approach things. I think him and I probably have about the same point of view with that, considering he's now been through it and I've been through, the whole military combat thing.
We would almost need to have multiple people on. Jeff, maybe even Adam Lucio again, maybe even Skip. I mean, we could go nuts about having a bunch of storm chasers on, all blabbing about this. I mean, they'd be like, "Oh, look at me," and I'm thinking, "Yeah, but what scares you the most?" Is that if it hits because I'd make a mention, what would you do if you saw a tornado and it flattened an elementary school full of kids? I'm sorry that made it sound kind of creepy, but that happened in Moore, Oklahoma. It hit a school with an elementary school with kids, and it killed someone. So, I mean, what happens if you come across this flattened elementary school and there's kids, and they're coming out and some of them are injured? I mean, that's where that's where storm chasers come in. The TV people, they're like, I think, somewhat separated from it, but they get the idea in their head and they see video later, and that's when it hits them. But storm chasers, they may see it like right away. There's no like wall between the real world that you're seeing right then and then somebody in a TV studio that can't see it until they actually see a video of it. Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's like, you see it right now or you see it later. Because once you see it later, then you feel helpless, unlike a storm chaser or somebody, paramedic, whatever, that can get there and are there and can help. Then you don't have to worry about seeing a video of it because they're there. Something like that. So, I mean, that's something we'd have to maybe have Jeff, Skip, Adam. I know several other chasers. I know Quincy Vagil, who I know too, because he. The interesting thing about Quincy, because I'm sure you know who that is.
I'm sorry?
About Quincy Vagil.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever. That this is the funny thing. This is kind of slightly inside baseball. He actually was in Anamosa because he stayed at Kelly's apartment a couple of way back many months ago. And I was like, it's like there's potential guests in town, because he used to work in television. He used to work for the Weather Channel, and he used to work in Connecticut in television. And now he just storm chases. It's like, and he's been somebody who's been in the field and has seen tornadoes and has been here and there. So he'd be another person to have on. But I mean, yeah, so we're coming up with good ideas, everybody. So we may have some polygons coming around. So, or maybe not, but we need to get it. And this is the time of year to do it because it's like there's no tornadoes, very, very few this time of the year. Unless Jeff Petrovsky is going to go start chasing blizzards, but that's a Reed Timmer thing. So Reed Timmer loves chasing blizzards or lake effect snow, because he was chasing lake effect snow again a week ago. It's like, whatever. He's out of his mind. So, yeah. So other than that, don't think there's anything else, because the show has been going over 2 hours since I started at about 6:45. And it's already almost 9. So at the time we're doing this. So before we lose our voices.
Yeah, mine's starting to crack a little bit right now.
So and my computer just went to sleep again. So I think that's telling me we got to stop.
Yep.
So
and my phone's probably going to kick me off anyways.
What's going to happen? Oh, it's going to kick you off. Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll see you next week for a show. We're not sure what kind of show. It might, well, we're not going to get anybody this quick. I'm sorry, but we're not. That'd be kind of hard to get them on. But so we'll see you next week for a show. We're not sure. Maybe. So bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.